keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome into Coffee Break. It is another familiar Monday where we here in Denver have to wrestle with the fact that we, again, did not get what I assume a lot of us asked for Christmas, which was a Broncos win, as we now have 2 games in a row, painful losses with playoff clinching hopes weighing in the balance. And now we've only got one left. So I'm going to bring in Will Petersen here with me to discuss this because I'm a little fired up this morning, but I have a feeling it's going to be fired up for a different reason than what you and maybe a lot of other people are feeling this morning. Will, what was your immediate reaction after the game?
Why didn't they go for 2? I mean, in what world are you leaving your fate up to giving the ball back to Joe Burrow on a coin toss? And I get it. They stopped him, right? But their offense was so pathetic in overtime. You have 2 yards to go to the playoffs for the first time since 2015. 2 yards. Draw up your craziest trick play, Richie. You can't miss play. This is the season. This is legacies. This is defining. Oh, Nick's holding up the 2. And you kick the extra point? You kidding me? Then I'm watching Broncos tonight, last night, with our friends over at 9 News, our Broncos insider, Mike Kliss. He goes, my understanding was everyone, players, coaches, everyone on that sideline wanted to go for 2. Kliss is connected as anyone, him and Andrew Mason. What in the world? The whole team, the whole coaching staff, everyone wants to go for 2. And just because they review the MIMS thing and that gives you an extra 45 seconds to a minute, you decide to kick the extra point. And this is not revisionist history. I could show the text thread. I was firing it off to everyone at the time. I cannot believe you're not going for 2. You're going to lose in overtime, and that's what happened.
Well, here's what I'll say. Right off the bat, I don't think kicking the extra point was the wrong decision. That's why I think I'm fired up for a different reason than everybody else. I don't think it was the wrong decision. I understand that we look at it now that it didn't work and say you're 2 points away, you're 2 yards away from going to the playoffs for the first time since 2015. And all you had to do that they were clicking on that play, that touchdown pass. But prior to that, it wasn't just like automatic. They were chunking down the field. It was an up and down game all game offensively for them. And Mims makes his second amazing grab of the game, much more contested than his moon ball touchdown the first time. My issue was not with going for 2, because if you go for 2, if you lose the coin toss, you just got to get a stop. They did. Then they screw it up offensively. We have screen passes left and right. We can't move the ball. They get a stop again. So if you're telling me that I was going to get but not 1, but 2 stops on Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
It was a doink on a 24-yard field goal. Let's not act like that was a stop, okay? That was a gift that the kicker he doinked it. They didn't get 2 stops. They got 1 stop. Let's be clear on that.
Okay, I'll amend that. If you're going to tell me that we had 3 offensive possessions basically in overtime to try to get a field goal, and I can take that chance over risking it all on one play, I'm not against kicking the extra point there. My issue is because quarterbacks are always going to want to go for 2. Will, name me an NFL quarterback that's going to score a game-tying touchdown and be like, you know what, bring him out. That's just in their nature. Okay. And I'm as aggressive as they get. So had they gone for 2, I think I would have been like, all right, let it ride. Let's go. That's a little ballsy, but we're going to put the chips on red and we're going to let it ride. I get it. But I've heard Cecil Lammy and other people here in the building be like, you know what? If they went for 2 and they didn't get it, what we'd be saying? Oh, it's okay. Look at the cojones on our head coach. And he was rolling with it and he ran it. It just didn't work. That's not what we would be saying. That's not what the headline would be at denversports.com or on the morning news cycle at First Take and all that. We would have been saying your offense was inefficient. You got caught up in the moment and you weren't using 1,000-foot view. It's all about whether they make it or they didn't. Because, Will, if they stop the Bengals and they go down and kick a field goal, we're not having a conversation about should you have gone for 2 because it worked out, right?
I get it. I see what you're saying, but okay, let's unpack this. You're more upset about the play calling in overtime than playing not to win. What about the post-game press conference where he admits, and I wrote about this on Saturday night.
I read it.
He admits the tie element came into play. Do you know how cowardice that all sounds? Oh, well, we kicked the extra point because we could win or tie and go to the playoffs. It's a 10-minute overtime. You're not holding Joe Burrow off the scoreboard for 10 minutes.
But again, Will, I'll push back on you again and say, hey, listen, if him admitting that, if the tie was a factor, if they go for 2 and they lose, again, I can hear the pundits on TV. I can see the articles online being like, Sean Payton, this arrogant son of a gun, all he had to do was tie. All he had to do was not lose, win or tie, and you're in. And because he's so egotistical and he has so much hubris in his offense and this and that and this and that, he had to try to get cute and go for 2, and he missed it, and he screwed him in the process. Would that not be what we're saying?
I don't think so, because honestly, Richie, I'm with Cecil. I'd be saying at least they didn't give the ball back to Joe Burrow. At least they won or lost based on
their own terms.
Did on that one play, okay? My problem with it is your defense gave up like 500 yards again, and you decided consciously you're going to let Joe Burrow touch the football again.
Yeah.
He's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, maybe top 4, but he is clearly in the big 4. It's him, Josh, Lamar, and Patrick, okay?
Yep.
And you gave him the football back. That's where my problem is, and that's where I actually agree with Cecil. I could live or die with Bo Nix one play for the playoffs. I couldn't live or die with Joe Burrow got to touch the ball 3 times in overtime.
But again, in order for him to touch the ball 3 times in overtime, that means your defense, at least at the beginning, did the job they were supposed to do. They got the stop, Will. They got the stop.
They got one stop, but the second one was an all-time luck.
My point is they should have only needed to get 1. You should have. That's my problem, is the defense. Sometimes you're not going to win the coin toss. Let's say the game wasn't a go for 2 and win. Let's just say they were tied and the Bengals couldn't convert to win the game or whatever, and they go in overtime. Sometimes you're going to lose the coin toss. You lost the coin toss. Your defense, which had its problems, tough game for Riley Moss, but also tough game for a guy to come back to in his first game back from an injury, is to have to face a quarterback who's putting up MVP numbers and 2 of the best wide receivers in the league, one of which is probably going to win the Triple Crown. So I get it, but your defense got the stop that you needed. Why can you not then convert? And then you're gifted, to your point. I'm with you. You're gifted a doink that doesn't even doink in. It hits perfectly on the crossbar and bounces backwards, because we see so many of those doinks go like off the iron, up and in. You got it. You had 2 chances. It wasn't even about Joe Burrow. He was neutralized to that point, and Sean Payton could not orchestrate this offense to be able to get 3 points on that many tries. That, to me, why does that give you confidence that they would have converted the 2-point play?
Well, there's a difference between moving the ball 60 yards and getting 2 yards. But
I get you.
To be fair here, I will come around a little bit. I have a tweet right now that's going viral because it was 12:30 on Saturday night, I guess Sunday morning at that point. I couldn't sleep. And I'm watching on their first possession of overtime. What happened, Richie? Bo Nix and Troy Franklin can't connect again.
They need to stop.
I tweeted, I'm losing sleep over this. The thing's up to like 200,000 views. And I got all these people in my replies saying, that's not on Bo, that's not on Bo, that's on Troy, that's on Troy. Maybe it is. My point was, it's both of them. They couldn't connect. I wasn't blaming Bo or blaming Troy. Go to my Twitter, go rewatch it. I'm sure you can picture the play. It's 3rd and 6. He's got Troy down the left sideline. And it's like we've seen so many times this season. Troy Franklin just falling over while the ball is 2 yards out of his reach. That's where I will come around to you. That was the icing on the cake of, are you kidding me?
And
Bo
again,
and Troy can't connect again.
I agree with you on two fronts there. One, that throw that Bo made to Marvin Mims that traveled 67 yards in the air, that might be the best throw a Broncos quarterback has made since the Peyton Manning era. And you might have to go back to like 2012, 2013 Peyton to match a throw like that. That was unbelievable. And the throw and catch to Marvin Mims, when Bo threw that game-tying touchdown pass, it looked like maybe in it just because it looked like a heave and a prayer. He is bailing out of that pocket, coming up against the sideline, and I just got to give it a shot because if it falls incomplete, we just hopefully take another try. And Marvin Mims, who's an undersized...
It was fourth down, bro. It was fourth down.
Oh, that's right. You're right. It was fourth down. And Marvin Mims, as an undersized receiver, got up into double coverage to make that catch and survive the ground. And I do think that was not like a lucky call stands. Like that was truly a touchdown, and he survived the ground and all of that. But as good as some of those throws were, Bo was off on some of those throws. And I think it's been most highlighted in the throws to Troy Franklin because I've never seen two former teammates have less chemistry together than those two. I mean, they were on fire together at Oregon. And I don't know exactly what it is because it's easy because Bo's making plays and he's putting up statistical numbers and the Broncos offense is much better, but Troy Franklin's is not. And you can say, oh, well, that clearly shows you it's Troy Franklin's fault. Troy Franklin had his man beat on that play. He had the steps. He was open. He got overthrown. So I don't know if it's 51%, 49%, who takes the blame there. What I do know is I don't want to see any more deep balls to Troy Franklin. If it's going deep, it better be to Marvin Mims or Cortland Sutton. I don't see any reason why we need to waste more time when we have so little margin for error left trying to figure. It's like fetch. We're trying to make this Troy Franklin, Bo Nix thing happen, and it's just not.
Well, and there's a third name I'll give you, and he played well. He just didn't have opportunities. Devon Bailey. Like every time Devon Bailey gets the ball, Richie, he makes plays. But how many times did it feel like Bailey was targeted against Cincy? Like 3, 4?
He was a non-factor. When you're watching it, you're not recognizing him even out there on the field.
And that's what's frustrating to me too. Is like I'm not going to rehash the whole Tim Patrick thing. You know I'm pissed about Tim Patrick.
Yeah.
For months. But you do have Bailey on your roster. You have Sutton, Mims, and Bailey. Yet I feel like every time I look up, it's Troy. Other games, it's been Lil Jordan. Like, this is what's frustrating about it, too, is this is no longer September. This is December with the playoffs on the line in overtime. And the play is to Troy Franklin. Again, that's where I can come around to your line of thinking that OT was the bigger deal than the two, because on a critical third down in overtime in December in Cincinnati, you went to Troy Franklin and it didn't work. Did anyone expect it was going to work?
No, I'm with you. And that's why I think, again, my frustration does boil down to, at its core, I am becoming more frustrated with Payton, the play caller, than Payton, the game manager, or Bo Nix, the quarterback, or the Broncos defense, or whatever it is. I really am starting to struggle with in those crunch moments and situations, which are going to come around, frankly, in every game. I know that the Broncos have kind of been in do or die mode for a lot of the season, and they've overperformed, and then they hit to 9 wins with 4 to play, and you just got to win 1, and they haven't been able to do that yet. But why is it that we see the same? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And it feels like we've had that conversation with the run game, and there's just nothing they can do there. They don't have the right playmakers. The offensive line, I think, is getting a little bit more blame than they should. I think they've actually been a decent run blocking offensive line this year. They just don't have the playmakers at that position. And the scheme that Sean Payton is running doesn't maximize the talent of the players they do have. But the constant screen plays and the running in and out, the substituting of players constantly, I think that these are the moments where the downside of that strategy is being magnified because we can't convert in these clutch situations.
No, that's fair. You're right. I mean, it's too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Like, it's my buddy texted me on Saturday morning, hey, what's the running backs going to look like today? You know what I told him? Oprah. He said, Oprah. Yeah. I said, you get a carry. You get a carry. I said, don't even lay any wager on the running backs because it's so unpredictable and silly. But it goes to show you that, okay, was Pro Football Focus wrong about them being the worst roster in the NFL? Of course. But were they ranked the worst roster in the NFL? And Sean is kind of showing that because he can't, even in week 17, commit to the same players. He has too many options because none of the options are quite good enough right now.
Is Vance Joseph is the shine coming off of VJ's defense a little bit in these last month or so? Are we starting to see some chinks in the armor? And I don't mean that to say like is the shine coming off of it because it's entirely they're just, sitting on their thumbs and just falling apart. They've had some injuries to deal with, but more than that is the collective NFL world, are the NFL offenses that have now had to face the Broncos in the last month or so. Is there enough tape out? Is there a script that's come out that says, hey, we know how to beat these guys? It just took 8, 9, 10 weeks for us to finally put it all compositely together.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, listen, Richie, I was told Riley Moss would fix it. Okay. Riley Moss is going to magically fix all the problems. Mm-hmm. Well, that was the opposite. Riley Moss had his worst game in the NFL. Even said afterwards that he ate a bleep sandwich, right? Like he did eat a bleep sandwich. T. Higgins went off on Riley Moss. His numbers against Moss were Star Wars numbers. So let's chill on the whole a second-year corner that we still don't know a ton about is going to fix it narrative. The pressure's on VJ though, Richie. I'm not saying he's getting fired. I think that would be too extreme. Yeah. But a lot of that goodwill that he built up in September, October, and November.
He's a hot coaching candidate. Yeah.
He ain't getting a head coaching job, not unless he fixes it quick and they go on a playoff run. I'll tell you that much. So I don't know. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but I think it's worn off in a big way.
I think so too. And I think that, again, I acknowledge it. And I'm seeing some of our commenters here at the bottom of the screen acknowledge it too. We don't know if Riley Moss was truly fully 100% back because his timeline was so fuzzy. And it was kind of a long, slow process. Even if he was fully healthy, that's like I said earlier, a tough first assignment back is, hey, you're going to juggle between Jamar Chase, the potential Triple Crown winner, T. Higgins, who's a bona fide wide receiver 1 on 10 plus teams in the NFL and is probably going to get a bag in free agency, and Joe Burrow, who if his team had 2 or 3 more wins, which the numbers he's putting up make it almost statistically impossible for them to have the record that they have, because he as a quarterback is having one of the best seasons of his career and an MVP level season. That's a tough assignment for any cornerback to have to come back from. So I understand that. And there's a little bit of grace there. But as you alluded to, it's not just Riley Moss. Okay. They did not get the requisite pressure up front that we've seen. They got some sacks on Joe Burrow on 2nd and 3rd down in the second half that I think contributed to the fact that they were able to come back and kind of keep things tied. But I don't think we've seen this pass rush and interior rush be as terrorizing as they have in the past. Mike Gesicki and Yoshivas, whatever the Bengals receivers were, those guys were eating over the middle. They had career days. Mike Gesicki had like 9 receptions coming into the beginning of the 3rd quarter in the game. I think that was a career high at halftime for him. So just like we've seen in the past, it felt like the tight ends in the middle of the field were killing the Broncos, which points to subpar linebacker play or ineffective play from the nickel position. And that you add that on top of T. Higgins going Death Star on Riley Moss. And Pat Surtain can only do so much. Jamar Chase didn't have a bad game, but he certainly didn't have the kind of games that he's been having all season to get him to where he's at statistically. So I think the shine has come off, but I also, it feels like one of those things where I don't exactly know what you do to fix it other than, hey, we've just got to be tighter. You've got to tighten the screws. We've got to execute better. And I know a lot of that sounds like cliches, but if bringing back Riley Moss isn't going to help, and that's what we kind of thought because they were rolling before he got hurt, they got exposed a little bit when he came back, and we had to go through the Levi Wallace and Chris Abrams drain and all of that. I don't think there's just they're not getting another piece back. They've just got to be better.
Yeah, in the last 2 games, Richie, you brought up the linebackers. When Alex Singleton tore his ACL, we all thought, this is really bad. And then it didn't really matter because Justin Strnad and Cody Barton played really well. Well, Justin Strnad is showing you why he's been a career special teams player.
Brutal penalties.
The last 2 weeks. You really miss Alex Singleton.
Yep.
The problem, he's not like Riley Moss. There's no timeline. His season is over. You're right. Middle linebacker is a position that either Singleton's going to need to get healthy or they're going to need to upgrade because Strnad played well for a little bit, but it's clear now against elite offenses, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, he's not up for the task.
No, and I think that with Alex Singleton, I think that, we've heard James Marilat and others and be detractors of Alex Singleton's great at making tackles 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage and this and that because he leads the team in tackles and just like he did when he was in Philly and all that. And that's great. But the first two words that come to mind when I think of Alex Singleton are not illegal contact. Those are the first two words that come to mind when I think of Justin Strnad. The penalties in just backbreaking, gotta get stopped scenarios from Justin Strnad and that interior kind of portion of the front seven. It's just you can't beat yourself. It's already going to be tough enough to beat a team like Cincinnati, who, despite what their record says, has been one of the hottest teams in football offensively all year long and is clicking together as a team in the last month or so. It's hard enough to do that without beating yourself. And I just think that the Broncos, who now are in do or die mode, where they've basically got to beat the Chiefs to make the postseason. I know there are scenarios where if they lose and the Bengals also lose, but when you start getting into like playing dominoes and just hoping it all falls your way, that's not a position that anybody wants to be in. And frankly, it's a disappointing position to be in when you had 9 wins in hand with 3 to play and just had to win 1.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had the quote from Bo Nix. Hey, Bo, you got 3 to win 1. And he said, nope, we got 3 to win 3 and then go win the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Well, you've gagged the first 2, so now it comes down to this Kansas City game. Bunch of reports yesterday morning they're not going to play their starters. The Broncos are like an 8.5, 9-point favorite. Like, Richie, you're right. If you don't win this game, this is 2008 all over again. This is a massive and unacceptable collapse. Like, forget perspective, okay, guys? I'll have perspective in March. Yes, it was a good season. But don't sit here today, and I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm saying people on social media are doing this. Don't sit here today and tell me, well, it was a great season. It was fun. They had like a 97% chance to make the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, you can take your perspective and put it where. I'll catch up to you in a couple months.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that I do believe that when the dust settles and we've had that time, we'll be able to look back at Bo Nix's rookie season and be like, wow, the Broncos outkicked their coverage a little bit. They outpaced their projections nationally for sure, but even locally here, I don't think there were a lot of us banging the table that this is a 10-11 win, potential 10-11 win team, at the start of the season. So all of that will come, but I completely agree with you. You have to deal with what's in front of you. And what was in front of them was that they had the chance to be a 10, 11, 12 win team at the back end of the season and truly solidify themselves as a playoff contender. And the gamesmanship that they decided to play by flexing into a second road Thursday night game in a single season against a divisional opponent who's ahead of you in the standings and is coming into a season of their own, you lost that game. And even if your logic, which I heard at the time, was, hey, that's going to be a tough game no matter what, even if we concede that game, it gives us extra time to prepare for Cincinnati. Well, look how that worked out, okay? You blew both. So any kind of gamesmanship or 4D chess that everyone thought they were playing, it didn't work. And now I understand that the Chiefs are sitting their starters. And when they say sitting their starters, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to play. I don't think you're going to see Travis Kelce and maybe a couple of other singular players. But it's not like they're rolling out a practice squad to play this game, because although that they're not, the starters aren't going to play for 3 weeks now, when they turn around and play on January 18th, they've still got to keep momentum going as a team, and they've still got to keep operations rolling. And Will, how many times have we seen Chiefs beat the Broncos with backup quarterbacks in games they're not supposed to win? I vividly remember Bloody Thursday when Patrick Mahomes injures his ankle in the first half of the first quarter, and the Chiefs go on to win 30-6 against, I believe that was the Joe Flacco led Broncos at the time.
Sounds right. They all kind of blend together. But
Was it Chad Henne that came in as the backup quarterback, I think, and they end up scoring. They win by 3 touchdowns, and it's embarrassing, and it's not the first time the Chiefs have had to play a backup quarterback and still had a chance to win the game. So I don't care if the spread says 9.5, 13.5, 16.5. I hate the position that the Broncos are in right now. I'm just going to be frank.
The only thing I'll say, it's better for Kansas City if Cincinnati doesn't make the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Nobody wants to face that Bengals team the way they're rolling the playoffs. It's the same reason that no one wants to face Buffalo in the postseason. Just the records are different. Cincinnati offensively is rolling, and they're starting to figure out on defense. So if I'm the Chiefs and I can say, hey, if we lose this game, yeah, boo-hoo, it doesn't do anything for us, but it keeps Joe Burrow out of a playoff gauntlet that's already stacked with Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, and Russell Wilson, I guess, if you want to keep him in there. I'm doing it. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not going to throw the game, okay? That doesn't happen.
But
they also ain't going to be upset if they lose. So there may be an effort thing there. Just keep an eye on that. I think that's a good little nugget to drop in our viewers' heads.
Yeah, because listen, unless you're the Miami Dolphins in a failed experiment, tanking doesn't really happen in the NFL. And those backup players who are fighting for contracts of themselves, they're fighting for playing time, roster spots, and all that. Those guys have pride. You don't think that they know about all they read their press clippings, and I know everyone always says they don't. Those guys have all the same access to Twitter and TVs and newspapers like we all do. They know what's at stake. They know all the parameters. They know all that stuff. They're not stupid. So even if Patrick Mahomes isn't playing, you don't think they're going to go out there and play with some pride? And would it stun me at all now if the Broncos, who are kind of reeling on the back end of the season after getting 9 wins and securing a winning record, would it surprise me at all if we're coming in here next Monday and stunned that they lost again? No. And I hate that feeling because I had so much confidence in the direction this team was going up until these past 3 games. And now it just feels like that doubt is starting to creep back in naturally.
Oh yeah. It's going to be a nervous week. There's no sugarcoating it. I don't think anyone feels like the Broncos are going to beat the Chiefs by 20 on Sunday. No, it's going to be a nervous week, Richie. And guess what? They did it to themselves. You blew it in LA. You blew it in Cincinnati. You dug your own grave. Hopefully you don't have to go lie in it.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. We've got no shortage. The NFL has no shortage of drama. On the way out, I will say this too, because I'll talk to you more about it later this week when you come on again. But I just want to say a quick, shout out, raise my hand. I'll puff my chest when I'm right, but I'll raise my hand when I'm wrong. Will, the goalie tandem of Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood looks pretty good. It looks pretty good.
Rolling, Richie, and it's just the room. There's just a comfortability in the locker room that there wasn't before. The culture has been improved overnight. I'm not saying plan the parade, but I'm saying clear your calendar for late June. They look like a Stanley Cup is back in play.
They absolutely do, and if this pace continues, and we're talking about conference championship, Stanley Cup contending hockey back in Colorado, and I will happily accept all the egg on my face that the guys like me who wanted to trade Mikko and get the top flight and all that, I will happily be wrong, because I'll tell you what, it's more I'm breathing easier and having more fun watching them. I can only imagine what the guys in that locker room who are having to put their bodies on the line night in and night out are feeling, even magnified to that respect.
Oh, yeah. Alexander Georgiev was a fun sucker. That's what he was. Avs hockey was not fun the last 2 years. It is fun again. And I told you, man, middle-of-the-road goalies, that's what they needed. They didn't need a top-tier guy. Won a cup a couple years ago with 2 middle-of-the-road. I think Blackwood's a little better than middle-of-the-road. I don't want to sell him short. Wedgwood firmly middle-of-the-road. This is a formula for success.
Well, Will, by the time I talk to you next, it will be 2025. So a happy new year to you and to the rest of you out there. Make sure you give us a follow on social media at Denver Sports 1043. Our YouTube channel has so much content on demand at your fingertips from guys like Will Petersen, Jake Shapiro, James Marilat, Cecil Lammy, Andrew Mason, anyone on our Denver Sports 1043 The Fan lineup, you name it. It's all there for you, and we'll see you tomorrow.